5-0 after dispatching of the Jets last week. Russ downed the Giants behind 270 yards and a touchdown to move the Steelers to 6-2.
Oh, my.
We're going to start with you, Nick. Do you want to apologize for months, maybe years?
I'm all ears. I'm all ears, Nick.
To who? Who do I have to apologize to? Did you even finish the question?
He would show the Broncos full screen.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Those numbers are
Let me
fake.
ask you
And
a
the
question,
numbers were
KW.
nice, and
Hold
you
on.
shot them down
and you
time
would
and
always
time
say,
again.
you would undercut your own numbers. You'd be like, no, he wasn't as good as these numbers. Let me ask you a question, KW, because you used to be a bougie executive, hired people, wouldn't fire people, was a good guy, but you hired people. If someone came to you and was like, hey, we should hire this guy, and you were like, no, terrible idea. He's like, no, we're going to hire him. And from that moment, for the next 2 years, that guy was terrible. And then he was awesome for 2 weeks. And that guy, the guy who suggested him came back to him and was like, you owe me an apology.
Yeah.
Would you apologize?
Well, if he was awesome for the previous 10 years and had a Super Bowl ring.
Listen, I will not
He found
apologize.
his groove.
I will not apologize to Bruce Hard. What I will say is this. This is, we can show it to you, the best 2-game stretch Russ has had in 3 years. And while Brew is, listen, I did not think he could play this well even for just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I did not think it was possible. He had more than 250 yards, 100 passer rating in back-to-back games. Hasn't done that since early 2021. Now, a little sour with the sweet, Brew. It's good for, there's the full screen. It's good for your Russell Wilson take. It's bad for your beloved Ravens that now have very real AFC North competition.
They are real competition. I think the Ravens are better, but the Ravens, as I've said before, have a defensive problem.
Yeah,
and
Russ
obviously the
Moonball
Steelers
cooking.
is much better. Defensively, they don't have the offense that the Ravens have. But here's it. Look, I think we can throw out the Nat Hackett year with Russ. All right, his first year in Denver, let's throw that out.
I'm not throwing it out.
Last year, as I've
He
said,
got
and I
benched and
agree,
fired.
26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, top 7 passer rating, and I've admitted it wasn't quite as good as the
You
numbers
wanted them to
say,
stick with Justin
but
Fields 2 weeks ago.
No, well, I thought I played cautious. I'm a little more cautious than Mike Tomlin, apparently. But look, they look really good.
They
with
look
Russ.
really good.
And we'll see if he can keep this up. But he has a real connection with George Pickens, and as good as those numbers look, we all know they could have looked way better. They had 2 touchdowns. The first one to Pickens that was called back because of a face mask. And I know it happens, but I'm just saying. And then that one where Pickens didn't get his second foot down, it could have been a monstrous day for Russell Wilson. And yeah, Nick, they're dangerous to the Ravens in the AFC North.
Consecutive 400-yard games for the first time since 2018, total yards.
Yeah.
So the defense is good. If the offense gets right,
I love it.
And it's opened up the run game, too. Najee Harris, last 2 games, over 100 yards rushing. They do look strong. But they got one of the toughest schedules in the league.
The Steelers all offseason it was. They have to go 7-2.
Yeah.
First 9 because it's so hard, but they're 6-2.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, listen, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have been great with Russ. I'm just incredibly impressed with what Russ has been doing. I've talked about this now a lot at length. It's funny to see Nick, have to kind of accept that a little bit. Still kind of struggling with it, but I get it. There's still plenty of takes that I have that are kind of proven incorrectly, and it's only been 2 games. And I'm like, well, relax. Let's just let this unfold. It kind of happened with the Cowboys. I'm like, the Cowboys aren't that good. The Cowboys aren't that good. And they were winning a couple games, and I was like, they're still not that good. I promise you. Everyone's like, you're so wrong. You're biased. And now it's like, well, now look at them. So I do get it. Just because you have a little bit of evidence to the contrary doesn't mean that you're automatically wrong. So I will give the benefit of the doubt for Nick for that. But I do obviously think he is wrong, because I think what Russ has been doing is not fool's gold. I don't think it's misleading. He could have actually had another 3 touchdowns. You have the face mask, you have not getting the 2 feet down, and the other one, I still forget who it is, the other receiver, where he just essentially didn't turn around and get open, right? He ran. It's not necessarily the wrong route. It was just a bad play on him, quite frankly, that Russ had him open, and he didn't go to the open spot. So Russ's numbers were actually even somewhat lower. But again, 20 for 28, 278 yards and a touchdown. Really, really, really impressive. The balls that he was throwing, I thought were beautiful. He had a couple balls that were absolutely perfect. Troy Aikman was like, you literally can't throw it any better than that. And we're talking about deep shots. And again, I know a lot of people like to hyper focus on some of the balls that are slightly underthrown or slightly overthrown. And it's like every single quarterback does that, right? Every single quarterback does that. And the truth is that if we're going to rip quarterbacks for their bad play in earlier weeks, whether it's Russ from last year, the year before, whatever, then we also have to give them praise. We are obsessed in this whole week-to-week moment, right? And I try not to be. I try my best not to be, but sometimes even just the content that I, help create and part of at this point, it becomes very difficult not to, right? We are so whatever happens most recently, recency bias, we become obsessed with, right? So if Russ plays good this game, it's he's amazing. And if he plays bad next game, it's I told you he's awful. I told you he needs to be benched. It was a mistake for the Steelers. And it's such these extremes. But for players that people don't like or aren't as popular or whatever it may be, there's such this habit of downplaying their successes and elevating their weaknesses, right? If Russ played really bad this game, or just, I don't know, was 15 for 30, 210 yards, a touchdown and an interception, I'm pretty confident that would probably get more attention, longer segments than doing this, right? And again, I get it, it's against the Giants, so that's totally understandable to a degree. But I'm just trying to trying to find that balance, right? Trying to find that balance of when a quarterback does do something good, they do deserve it to be kind of praised and unpacked, especially when they do something bad, it gets so much heat, right? Like I've ripped Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys plenty, right? But if Dak Prescott went out against, say, the 49ers or against the Lions, and he throws for 4 touchdowns, 340 yards, and beats the Lions, well, then that deserves to be like, he played unbelievable. He played great. There's no way, right? Like it deserves that weight behind it. And then I'd like to see Russ start to kind of get that weight, get that attention, get that momentum, because in a lot of ways, listen, it's a lot easier to be disrespected when you get paid hundreds of millions of dollars. But the reality is that Russ, and again, I've criticized him plenty, he does deserve praise, not even just for his play on the field, but off the field, right? To have his name absolutely dragged in the mud with the Broncos, right? To have Seattle Seahawks players pretty much be like, Russ is a diva, right? To have Sean Payton from the moment that he gets there pretty much kind of have this hostile relationship with Russ, right? To then have Russ, in a way scapegoated for the failures for the Broncos, right? Even though Nathaniel Hackett was not obviously a good coach, doesn't, really ran a poor team. And then him and Sean Payton, Russ wasn't a fundamental issue, but was still treated as such, right? He then goes to Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Justin Fields gets picked up immediately, right? And then it's this whole back and forth. So, and he's done it with class. He has done it with maturity, and I do think that a lot of what Russ does can be inauthentic and a little fake, which is why other players and coaches can kind of struggle with him, which I get, and I'm sure there's plenty of other things that go on that we don't have all the information on. So I understand it, but it can't be denied that he has still handled the last 2-3 years of his career with an incredibly high level of maturity and class, right? He didn't come, he never made comments of like, yeah, this is what happens when I'm with a coach who supports me. Or he didn't, no shots at Sean Payton, no weird moments. No, when they picked up Justin Fields, he was like, Justin Fields is the backup, I'm the starter. Like he just didn't do any of those things. He was supportive. In fact, as soon as Justin Fields got, picked up and signed, I'm pretty sure Russ sent out on social media like, hey, can't wait to have you part of the quarterback room or something, right? So I think he deserves a tremendous amount of praise. I really, really do. I think he's handled this whole situation with class. It's awesome to see him have success and prove doubters wrong. And I just think it's overall a really good story. Not to mention the Pittsburgh Steelers I think they finally have a quarterback that actually helps their team rather than is neutral or pulls them down. To me, that's, after everything that I just said, like, that's actually the biggest story, which I talked about way more deeply with the herd. But overall, no matter how you slice it, it's just been undeniably positive and beneficial for not only Russ but the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think if Russ continues to play this way, and then to even also continue to see the defense actually even improving, I know it's a good defense, but even see them kind of fine tune some stuff a little bit and kind of see if they can elevate. And maybe, like, again, the Chiefs have such a great defense, and yet they went out and picked up another player to kind of boost their defense. Just maybe some of these other little things that maybe the Steelers need to do, and really be like, hey, we have a team here. We have a squad. We can actually legitimately contend. This is not like, oh, yeah, we're just trying to get to the playoffs, win a playoff game or two. Like, no. If we play our cards right, we could legitimately get to the AFC Championship game. We could legitimately get to the Super Bowl. Like, so I'm curious to see if they make any moves at the trade deadline because as of right now, they got a squad. They got a squad, which makes that loss to the Cowboys, honestly, that much more devastating because they could be fighting for the #1 seed right now. But unfortunately for them, they dropped one that they needed to not drop, which now kind of gives them a smaller margin of error for at least the 1 seed. And of course, the Chiefs keep going on to keep winning, so that gap just kind of continues. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Russ proving his doubters wrong? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.